I thought they were menus. So, hello everyone. I am indeed Matt Jones, but you can see from the first slide, this is a piece of work done by many people from a range of places. And my job today is simply to be the storyteller. Now, animals. Hands up if you like that, animals. Great. Insects. Hands up if you like insects. Yes, some like insects. Plants. Yeah, some of you don't like any of those things. I'd like you to leave, because these are lovely things, right? But all of those things sometimes are really clever at hiding themselves. So, put your hand up if you can see this little critter. Oh, well done at the back, perfect. What about this one? Oh, I love owls, do you? Beautiful, aren't they? That's an owl. Yeah, an owl. If you can't see any of these things, I am a doctor. But not that kind, but I can talk to you later. All right, now, this is one of my favorites. Ah, yes, and this is local. So if after Kai you have some time, head down to the Garden of the Gods, which is near Colorado Springs. We went there on the weekend, and can you spot a creature lurking in the bush? Yeah, I can see it, yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? It's a beautiful place, and you should go and see it. What about this one? Can you see one creature? Yeah? Anyone see two creatures? Good. There is only one creature there. Just one more. We're warming up, right? Now, one of my favorites. See it? The classic, right? The chameleon. The chameleon. And chameleons are, like many of the other things I've just shown you, really interesting because they can camouflage themselves. The first ones I showed you, they've evolved to fit in. The chameleon, as you probably know, can change its colors dynamically to blend in, but it can also change its colors to signal to a mate or to its wider context. So it does some social signaling. So animals are great. Here's another one. Humans. You know, we're not bad either at trying to camouflage ourselves, in this case, not to disrupt the wider ecology. So far, so good. There is, though, a creature in our midst that is not very good at all at blending in, and you've probably all got one very close to you now. It is, of course, the mobile phone. It demands your attention, it stands out, and it disrupts the wider ecology that it's meant to fit into. So, what we're trying to do in our group is work towards a set of devices that when you place them down, they blend in. They disappear into the background, but remain useful. Because if your phone just completely disappears, that will be very bad. And you'll spend hours looking for it. So we're building systems that can blend in, but still give you some context information, some useful information about your messages. Now, in previous work in the HCI community and beyond, there have been a range of interesting proposals about how we might better fit our mobiles into our lives. So in this case, a very simple one. The proposal here is to print stickers that match what you're wearing. More recently, I guess some of you might have done this. If you have a Pixel phone, you can print a case. On the back of mine, if you can see it, I have a chameleon, because it fits in to the context. What about subtle notifications? Again, lots of interesting work in the Kai and other literature about how you could give a user some information without disrupting people around them. So in this particular piece of work, have a look at that cup, for example. There's a display hidden in the cup so that you think, I'm about to have a glass of water. I'm not, because there's a hidden little display, and I can look at this and get some information, and you are not aware of what I'm doing. So lots of propositions about keeping things to the user. This is some of our own work. We worked on smartwatches. So imagine I'm wearing a smartwatch now. I can't afford one, obviously. and I'm pointing my hand out towards you. I can't see my smartwatch, but you would be able to see the display. And perhaps there would be a message on the display which is relevant not to me, but to you. So all sorts of different ways of subtly giving information to people. Okay, there's some background. Let me just now take you back a few steps, and I'd like to tell you why we got involved in this work. So I guess for the last 10 years, I and our team have been working with emergent users. These are users who are from what we could call resource-constrained contexts, usually in developing regions. So they might not have the literacy levels that we might take for granted. They might not have the computing power or networks that we take for granted. They're getting their hands on mobile technology for the first time. They're emergent users. For this piece of work, we worked with a range of groups in Africa and in India, as you can see. And one of the activities we asked them to do was to sketch out for us what they felt an ideal future mobile device would look and be like. And I'd like to share with you just some of the themes, or two of the themes that came out of that work. You'll see at the bottom of this slide, and of course in the paper, a reference to an extensive scholarly work, which you have, if you have the time, you can plow through and find all the details. So two themes came out. First was a theme of security. So you can see here one of the sketches from one of our participants in Nairobi. And it looks like a phone with a hand on it, doesn't it? A user's hand. Now, what the participant told us was they wanted to build a phone that when they put it down, from a distance, someone might look at the phone and think that the user's hand was still on it, as a sort of security deterrent. Because where they lived in Nairobi, if you bring out your mobile device and you put it down, it will be very quickly stolen away from you. So security was a big concern for many of our emergent users in low-income, low-resource contexts in India and in Africa. So that was number one. The other set of themes that came out of those workshops was around discretion and subtlety. So we worked with a group of domestic women workers who move around Bangalore, cleaning in private homes. And several of those people asked us to think about how could we build systems that they could use while working, but not in a way that their employer could notice. So one lady said, well, I've got a hairbrush, and I'd really like that, I haven't got any hair, so this doesn't work. When I'm brushing my hair, I'd like to be able to have a connection with my loved one. And we asked her, well, why don't you just, take your mobile phone up and send an SMS? And she said, well, if I did that, my employer would beat me because I'm meant to be working and not using my mobile device. So there's a real concern there, I suppose, a bit of security and safety as well, to have subtle notifications. So we did a lot of work in India and in Africa, but we also wanted to think about traditional users. I guess those are people like me and like you. So people who have lots of exposure to technology and live in developed region contexts. So for those traditional users, we did an observational study, we looked in the UK and in Europe, and we could see that people put their phones out all the time. I guess you have that experience, right? You can probably go around Denver, and you have this week, and you've probably put your mobile phone down somewhere, and you haven't felt threatened like our Nairobi participants were. What our traditional users wanted, though, was they wanted a sense that they could leave their phone out without being seen to be rude or without disrupting the context. So, with those motivations from Africa and India, the UK and Europe, we then had a series of iterative participatory design workshops with people from those regions. And I'm not going to take you through the different things that we did. All of that is in the paper. I'm going to jump straight to the probe that we deployed with those participants. And here it is. It's the Chameleon Prototype. And the prototype had two goals. The first is to blend in with the background. So put your hand up again if you can see the mobile phone in this picture. Good, you spotted it? If you can't see it, it's sitting on top of Kai 2014's guide, blending in or trying to blend in at the top. So that's the first thing it should do. It should blend in. The second thing is that if you have a notification, like a Facebook message or an SMS or a WhatsApp, we wanted to allow users to define areas of the image that would then glow to give the user only a subtle prompt that something had happened. So you can see here, I'm just passing through it. There is one of the colors glowing, glowing. And I'll show you an animation in a moment as well. The last thing it had to do was, when you're talking to people and your phone's out, you might be, I hope, looking them in the eye. And you might miss the immediate notification. So we built a feature into the phone that if you moved your hand over the phone, it would replay the notifications. But let me show you the video, and maybe this will become a little clearer. So first of all, what the user does, take a picture, and the phone zooms in. There's a chance to do some manual adjustment. You can adjust the color, the brightness, and then you can define areas. Here's the pink for messages. A message comes in, and you can see there that the pink flower went a different color. And you saw as the person moved their hand over the device, picking up a cup, the notification was replayed. So a very simple prototype, very simple probe. We wanted to deploy it to elicit whether it was of value or not. And so what we did was went back to Cape Town. We went, Langer is a township, a kind of slum. We put it onto our participants' own phones, their own Android devices. So it was their actual device they used day to day. And we interviewed them over a 5-week period to understand where they would use it, when they would use it, how they would use it, and so on. I'm going to give you just a very brief flavor of what we found out, and then I'm going to take us to look at the next step, the next versions of this prototype. So first of all, the emergent users. So they did find that they felt, some of them, a little more secure when they brought their phone out in public when they were using the Chameleon phone app. But, those situations are very insecure. And our participants told us that the device would have to be much more sophisticated in blending in for them to feel really comfortable when they put the device out. They were more enthusiastic, I think, around the privacy and discretion elements. In some of these contexts, people live very close together, so there aren't many secrets. And what our participants liked was the ability to color code messages so that someone couldn't overlook and start gossiping about their private life. That the message would come in, the color would glow, and only they would know who that message was from. Of course, they suggested improvements, in these resource-constrained contexts. Power is an issue, and at the moment, our prototype sucks power out of the mobile device. They also told us that they were often in situations where there weren't colorful backgrounds. So what happens if you put your mobile phone down on a surface that is very plain? What could we do then? And so, for example, we might ripple the image instead of using color coding to give the notification. Quickly then, in terms of the UK participants, so we deployed the same app in the United Kingdom. They didn't have any concerns about putting the device out in public. They were enthusiastic about, again, its ability to become more like a real animal, chameleon, fitting in, blending in, being less disruptive of the social setting. We'd have done this work, really, to give us evidence, or to find if there was evidence to take the work further. And what I want to show you now is perhaps the next steps that you could do if you wanted to realize these concepts. So in the short term, of course, you would have seen, for example, the infinity displays of, say, the Samsung Galaxy 8. And these wraparound screens are going to make it easier to do some of this chameleon work. There are transparent OLEDs. This is a large screen television where it can be fully transparent or partially transparent. And that kind of material in a mobile phone could make our life very easy. We're not going to use any of that technology. We're looking to the longer term. And there are two types of technology we're considering. There are some very interesting ways that you could coat and the device in terms of its optics. So you can see here a clever optical illusion. The light has been bent in a certain way. Or we might take inspiration from work which has used nanoparticles. So you can see here a chameleon toy. It's been coated in these nanoparticles. And as the device moves past colors, it picks up the color, and then all of the coating changes to match what it's going past. So you can imagine a mobile phone case that has similar materials. But that's for the future. Right now, what we can conclude is, well, the first thing I'd say is we've been working with emergent users in what you might think are difficult contexts. I'd encourage you to get involved because we've been really inspired by their insights into future mobiles. In our case, in this particular work, they helped us see the value of chameleon devices, and that value is in terms of security in some contexts where people are fearful to put out their devices, but also in terms of being able to give discrete, subtle notifications. We think there's enough evidence from these initial studies to encourage us to try and build interesting new materials, and I'd encourage you to try and beat us in doing that. If you want a head start, then you should go to our project website. There are lots of bits of data and other things that you can find. You can download the app in that gobbledygook URL and try it out for yourselves over the next couple of days. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi, Heather Patterson, Intel Labs. Beautiful work. Did any of your participants express any trepidation about potentially being the subject of surveillance by these objects that are blending so seamlessly into the environment?
The mic's not
Sorry,
working.
I thought I was hovering over it. Do you want me to repeat that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Did any of your subjects or research participants express trepidation about potentially being the subject of surveillance of these lovely devices that blend so seamlessly into their environments, not knowing when they're being recorded potentially?
Right. That's a really great question. Thanks for asking it. In some of the participatory workshops I didn't tell you about, we use some very invisible devices, little bits of perspex, very thin, and a number of the participants said they would always want to be able to know where the device was and have some sense that they were in control of it. They didn't raise a particular issue about being out of control in terms of surveillance, but they wanted something which was still a phone which they felt they owned. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. That segues to my question. In many of these emerging markets, phones are shared. Particularly, a woman won't have her own phone, but she'll use her husband's. Did that come up in the studies and all? And did people who shared phones have a different need for the ability to hide it?
Yes, that's very true. Certainly the participants in India, the women usually didn't have a smartphone and the men did. One of the things that we did see that because they could customize what the colors did, they liked the idea that they alone could see what the different colors would do to their messages. We didn't go into huge amounts of detail about that shared ownership, but it is a big issue.